We're Stacy and Sean. 4 years ago, we bought this old brick schoolhouse, sight unseen, and decided to turn it into our home.
Got a lot of work to do.
It's not a fixer-upper, it was a full-on, what are you thinking, water raining in from the roof, rebuild it from the guts kind of project. And since then, we've lived through scaffolding in every room, window disasters, haunted hallway rumors, and a lot of decision fatigue. We've restored a ton of original elements, uncovered forgotten treasures in the dirt, and slowly made this place feel like ours. So, nearly a year after moving in, I want to show you what it's really like to live inside a piece of history. A rural building that once served as a bridge between the old one-room schoolhouses and the bigger, more modern schools that came after. Out here in the middle of the cornfields, this school was built for farm kids. It was a place for community, a place to learn, to gather, to grow. And now, somehow, 100 years later, it's our home. This isn't just a renovation story. It's what happens when you say yes to something wild and figure out the rest as you go.
So a very short backstory on why we'd ever want to live in an old schoolhouse in the middle of rural Indiana, surrounded by not much more than cornfields.
Sean and I actually grew up just a mile apart down the same stretch of country road in a sweet little town called Franklin, Indiana. We both went to a rural elementary school called Hopewell, not the one that we live in now, but another old brick beauty with a bigger but classic Midwestern layout, a giant basketball gym plopped right in the center of all the classrooms.
Our house school, it doesn't have a basketball court. It's a lot smaller. And Sean and I really didn't talk that much as kids. Sean was pretty quiet, but both of us remember daydreaming about turning Hopewell into a house, debating with our siblings and our friends, like, this classroom would be my room, and Mrs. Hukin's classroom, that would be yours. And we keep the gym, obviously.
That weird little fantasy of turning a school into a home, well, it stuck. And we even took some of our wedding photos in front of Hopewell. And then life happened. High school, college, all the classic Midwest kids who wanted to leave the Midwest things. I'd always had plans to live in New York, and we did it. We spent a decade doing young person life in the city. Med school and jobs and subways and walk-up apartments and some chosen family. And honestly, New York will always be one of my greatest teachers. And then 2020 happened. And in 2021, Mr. Arlo was born.
And suddenly, the way we saw the world changed. We started planning and dreaming again, this time about being closer to grandparents and cousins and siblings. And we wanted our kids to have that magical Midwestern barefoot backyard childhood that we grew up with.
And being a textbook millennial with a love for vintage everything and thrift stores and every Wes Anderson home design scheme, I didn't want just any house. I wanted a weird old house, something with a story, something we could pour ourselves and all of our energy into. I remember one night, just a few days after our son was born, we were sitting on the couch staring at this tiny baby, and I asked Sean, hey, do you remember that old schoolhouse we used to pass on the way to cross-country meets? I wonder if it's ever been for sale, or if we could write a letter to the owners or something. We tried to find it on Google Maps, but eventually gave up. And then a few weeks later, boom, August 2021. An email from our realtor landed in my inbox, and I immediately started sweating. It was the school. I hammer called and texted my entire family and begged them to go see it.
We didn't actually see the school in person before buying it, which, yeah, maybe was a little stressful. But we did see it over FaceTime, thanks to my parents and sister going to the open house. And they knew way more about fixing up old buildings than we did, so if they thought it was a good idea, it was good enough for us.
So we put an offer in, sight unseen. And that night, we didn't sleep much. It was equal parts, please let this happen, and oh my gosh, what are we doing? But then our offer was accepted. And earlier that summer, the company I'd worked for as a third employee for 10 years went public. I sold some of the stock I'd held as an early employee, and quite literally the day that the money hit our account, we wired it all right back to pay for the schoolhouse. Once the school was ours, we had to figure out how to fix it. We needed to strip it down to the bones and rebuild it from the inside out, mostly because there was a leaking roof. Like a really leaky roof, which had caused rotten floors and tons of other issues that we needed to fix in the school. And naturally, it took a while to get the supplies that we needed because in addition to being a real fixer-upper, we were also in the depths of the pandemic and all the supply chain bottlenecks. But construction began while we were living out east because Sean had a bit of residency and fellowship to finish up. And then in October 2022, Miss Margot was born. So it was chaotic. We were working remotely and parenting and coordinating contractors and slowly realizing how much work it really is to fix up an old building and make it livable. Luckily, my dad knows a lot about construction and he helped us manage the renovation from afar. We never would have been able to do this without his brain or his methodic approach to solving big problems.
And then in 2023, we officially moved back to Indiana. We moved in with our parents for over a year, and in that year, we started tackling some of the hands-on work ourselves. While the experts worked on things like plumbing and electric and masonry and garage construction, we worked on small things like restoration and refinishing and building our kitchen and endless hours of grunt work.
Most nights last summer, we'd eat dinner, read books to the kids, tell them goodnight, and then head straight to the schoolhouse to work, scraping and sanding and caulking and fixing old glass and hanging kitchen cabinets. It was a sprint. And to be clear, the pace was not sustainable. We hit the renovation doldrums hard. There were definitely moments where we'd ask ourselves, is it always going to feel like this? Will we ever have a place we can call home? But last fall, we finally moved in. And there were a few things that have made life feel slightly more manageable this past year. For one, we've slowed down on the nighttime projects, and the kids are a little bit older, a little sturdier. But we still have a long way to go, but we're inching closer to the good part. The part where it does indeed feel like home, and that's what I want to share today. And we're always still trying to find little efficiencies, ways to reclaim time and energy so we can keep plugging away on the unfinished corners of the school. Which leads me to the sponsor of today's video. HelloFresh. So guys, we have spicy maple chicken, we have pork sausage, cavatap, San Antonio beef bowl. So which one looks most delicious for dinner?
I wanted that.
Oh, you want this one?
That beef bowl.
Okay, it takes 30 minutes.
Let's see how long it takes me with helpers.
On any given day, Sean's usually the weeknight cook, and he's incredible at pulling together full meals from random ingredients. But on the nights when the schoolhouse chaos creeps in, it's nice to have HelloFresh as an easy option to enjoy better-for-you home-cooked meals.
Want me to put the spicy pepper in yours?
Mm-mm.
Okay, we won't.
Don't put it in Margot's either.
Oh, okay.
We started using HelloFresh a few years ago when Sean was in residency working 70-plus hour weeks. Our friend Brian had just started working there, and he would drop off boxes for us because he was worried about Sean. HelloFresh uses high-quality ingredients like fresh produce and proteins that are carefully packed, portioned, and pre-measured to save you time and reduce waste. For me, I love making big, complicated weekend dinners together, but weekdays can be a bit of a chore.
Why don't you put tomato paste on it?
With HelloFresh planning, shopping, and delivering all the ingredients you need to cook dinner, you can do the fun part of cooking. Okay, so we're a little over 30 minutes, but I did involve the kids, so... Take advantage of HelloFresh's incredible offer by using my code SchoolhouseFM for 10 free meals plus free add-ons for life. One free item per box with an active subscription. Free meals applied as a discount on the first box, new subscribers only. Varies by plan. Sign up today and click the link below or use my code SchoolhouseFM.
It's yummy.
Now that we've been living here for almost a year and spent nearly 4 years in full-blown construction mode, we've made some discoveries.
And I don't mean metaphorical discoveries. I mean the actual physical, what is this and why is it here kind of discovery. So I'm gonna go to the basement and start with some of the weirdest ones.
After the school closed, it was used as a barn for cows and pigs and chickens and turkeys, at one point apple and straw storage. It held rural youth meetings. These chapters definitely left their mark on our school, and we have some discoveries to show for it. Some of our finds were innocent enough, like straw tucked behind the baseboards, but some were a bit darker.
Like the 72-inch snakeskin our electricians found tucked way up into the ceiling, or this probable kitten skull that our mason found inside a basement wall. I kept them all, naturally, and the Schoolhouse Museum really coming together.
Some of the other discoveries were just plain fascinating. There are stories from former students, like how they couldn't go to recess one day because travelers were camped next to the school, or how they quietly watch a funeral procession heading to the cemetery next door, and then all the normal school things like slides and seesaws and spelling bees.
After the barn era, the school got a second life. In the 1950s, it was bought by one of the former students who turned it into her home, and we found little clues that she left behind, like these amazing teacher magazines from 1917 and 1918. I love imagining that she saved them as a way to honor this place's past, and now we've hung them up and done the same. We've framed them, and they're like a little quiet tribute to what this building once was.
One of the most exciting historic discoveries came after a visit to the local history museum. Digging through the museum's basement and actually finding photos of the students who went here, real kids who once sat in these rooms and hung their coats on the walls, and the kids had last names that were super familiar to us from school and 4-H and sports teams. That's the kind of stuff that makes you feel connected to the people in your community who came before. But maybe the biggest discovery, physically speaking, came when we started ripping out the paneling and drop ceilings from previous renovations and found the original plaster walls underneath, still painted in all the original classroom colors. A lot of that plaster was damaged.
But hiding behind all that plaster was this brick.
So on the sections of the wall we could save, we did something I'm really happy with. I partnered with this company called UpPaint, which recycles unused paint from across the country, and we color matched the original classroom shape. So now these historic colors live on throughout the school, woven into place as it becomes our home. And then there's outside, which is another whole can of worms. We've been clearing out invasive plants, planting native trees and shrubs, and there's a whole video on the yard transformation if you want to go down that rabbit hole. But one day, curiosity got the better of us, and we thought, what if we brought in a metal detector?
Okay, so we're getting ready to go out into the yard and see if we can find anything good with this metal detector. Where did we get this metal detector?
Library.
From the library. And more of a can. Yeah, looks like there might be something. All right, you guys see any metal stuff? Yeah, let's dig.
Treasure?
Oh, that's a treasure?
I think it is.
Really? Is this trash or treasure?
Twizzle?
Treasure? Okay. Is this trash or treasure?
Twizzle?
Treasure? Okay. Trash or treasure?
Twizzle?
Treasure. Okay. What is this? Is this trash or treasure?
Twizzle?
Treasure.
Trash.
Trash? Thanks, Margot. That we found.
Trash?
Oh, that one's trash? But this one's treasure.
And this one's treasure.
Okay. Okay. No offense to toddlers, but they have horrible treasure taste.
Several months later.
So my friend Doug heard that I was using a metal detector from the library, and he loaned me his metal detector that he says is a lot better. So we're gonna do this again and see what we find.
One thing I'd love to find someday is a metal plaque or a marker from when students used to plant trees here for Arbor Day.
Yeah, I think trash. Looks like bent up trash.
They probably wouldn't have used metal, but hey, I can always hope.
Nope. Oh gosh, hang on, watch it. Oh, now we just have a broken piece of metal underground. Yeah. Metal detector works. Clearly, this round of metal detecting, another round of treasures.
Okay, so what's it like living in an old school, heating and cooling and ghosts? These are probably the most frequent questions I get across all the stuff I put out on the internet. So I'll start with the heat. And before I share the cost breakdown, I want to lay out a couple of things. The whole schoolhouse building is about 9,000 square feet total, but we live on the top floor, which is around 4,000-ish square feet, and that's what we heat and cool. The ceilings, though, they're 13 feet tall, which definitely goes against us in terms of efficiency. We have multiple furnaces and ACs, which we did on purpose so that we could zone everything, making it possible to control different areas independently.
I.e., the rooms with north-facing windows are always a bit cooler. And then the kitchen with south and west windows, always a bit toastier. What's wild is that even though the schoolhouse was built over 100 years ago, the original design and materials helps a ton with temperature regulation.
When we bought the schoolhouse, you could still see this old system of vents that used to be controlled by chains from a panel in the basement. You could open or close the vents with the chains to let air escape out the roof or circulate air from the boiler. But we took these out because we were adding water and gas lines here, and also these ducts were full of crud. But I saved all the chains and we're going to restore them and shine up the panel someday when the to-do list gets smaller. But back to the brick.
Brick is also kind of magical when it comes to temperature regulation. It has a high thermal mass, which means it can absorb heat and then slowly release it. So once you get the school a certain temperature, it helps it stay cooler in the summer and warmer in the winter. And in our school's case, we're not talking about just the exterior walls. Like, these are interior walls. Usually on a building, there's mostly just brick on the exterior, but we have these internal thick brick walls that go all the way up through the school. And when you add in the basement, which is actually a sub-basement, so it's half underground, that thermal stability goes up even more. The ground temperature helps regulate the whole building because the internal brick walls almost work like a giant radiator, pulling the temperature of that steady underground up all through the whole building.
Now, of course, we've also updated things. We insulated the heck out of the place. We had spray foam under a brand new roof, insulation on all the exterior walls, and eventually we'll have the modern windows done. The windows are finally getting redone again, but they haven't been sealed up since we started this whole project. Water, air, insects, all the things have been getting in. But that's a stressful saga of a story for a different day. Once the windows are finished and trimmed out, I can finally hang curtains, which is also going to help with the summer heat, especially since the biggest temperature fluctuations happen right next to the windows.
So with the caveats that our school is still leaking like a sieve through the windows, we also have 13-foot ceilings, is technically 9,000-ish square feet, and has not a curtain to its name, and still has construction folks coming in and out.
Here's what our electricity bill has been over the last year or so. These months right here are when we had the AC on to make sure our brand new floors didn't fluctuate too much in humidity while the windows were being replaced the second time. There were also some pretty powerful sanders and construction tools being used, and the garage was being built, so electricity was being used these months, and I don't think we'll be using this much this summer. Now, if you layer in what we've paid for propane so far to heat during the winter, this is a more accurate average of what we've been paying to heat and cool the schoolhouse for the whole year.
Now, if you're out on the East Coast and you're like, WTF, that's what I pay for my apartment. Because some of our electric bills in our 2-bedroom New York City apartment were close to this, had baseboard heat. Let me say, welcome to Indiana. I grew up here, but I didn't realize how much energy prices vary from region to region. That being said, we do have some future plans on how we're gonna make a dent in these bills to make the school even more efficient. The most immediate is fix the dang windows, which we're working on. And I'll be very glad to say goodbye to all the towels and the elephant absorbers blocking the breezes and collecting rainwater. Then we'll add curtains. After that, our next to-do is installing a wood stove for the bitterly cold days. Our yard with its silver maples gives us an endless supply of limbs and branches and logs to split. So that will be a little bit of work over time, but definitely can alleviate the energy costs and add some coziness on the most bitter days. And then eventually we do want to figure out a way to supplement with some solar. We weren't able to add solar panels on our roof. It would have voided the warranty, and I don't think the 100-year-old roof joist could have handled solar panels plus windstorms, but it is on our list to figure out. All in all, while it is a large house, considering the size and all the quirks of heating a century-old brick box, we're figuring it out.
Beyond the heating, one of the other questions I get the most is,
Tell me about the ghosts. I think that's a question that people always ask about old buildings, But for this one, I really don't get the sense that this was an unhappy place when it was a school. Everything we've read in the newspapers about the students who went here, people just seemed really proud of the school. There were reunions and people really gushed about it.
Some of the former students are quoted in a newspaper article talking about the school was its own little community and all the families in this community were very close, in the same boat, living through the Depression. And I think I learned more in 8th grades when I went to the school than kids do in 12. So I don't know. Seems like it was a really special place.
Although, when we bought the school, it definitely gave off haunted house vibes. And there were a couple newspaper articles, one about a former teacher who apparently came back from the dead, and another from the previous owners talking about an old maid teacher ghost who would rattle around. I've yet to experience anything like this. We've had some mice, a lot of bugs. The bathroom vents will rattle a bit in a strong storm, but no school ghosts as far as we can tell. I will say though, my daughter's favorite book in the whole world is this pop-up book called Haunted House. And literally the only thing that she'll watch on TV is this little puppet show from a library on YouTube about a ghost. So occasionally she'll be very nonchalant, no nonsense. There's a ghost in the bathroom. And I'm like, oh, really? Like, are they nice? And sometimes they are and sometimes they're not.
Margot, I have a question.
What?
Are there ghosts in the schoolhouse? Where are the ghosts?
They're in the basement.
Oh, they are? What do they say to you?
They're bad.
They're bad? Why are they bad?
Because they are. There's a monster.
There's a monster too? Really? What does he look like?
He's bad.
Oh.
There's monsters at Grim's house.
There's monsters at Graham's house too?
And Grim's and Papa's bed.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Here's everybody.
He hears everybody?
He cares everybody.
Oh, he cares everybody. So he's a nice ghost too. So he's nice? Oh.
So I don't know. Maybe there's something they know that we don't know. Now that I've shared a little bit about what it's like to live here, I figured I'd close by letting you in on what might be next. Obviously, the windows I referenced are huge. It is so much work prepping each one and cleaning and moving furniture every time we move to a new window. And I'll be really thankful when I don't have to worry every single time when it rains or there's a cold snap. And then there are some little odd projects around the house that are feeling good to get done. One project is a little dangerous door hole that we're fixing. We've had a baby gate in front of it for a year now, and we're finally building a little built-in shelf here with some salvaged glass that we got from my favorite shop here in town, Madison Street Salvage. I even got a lesson from Dennis and Scott on cutting glass, and it's not as hard as I thought it was.
You ready
Yeah, I'm ready.
to cook the bacon? Does she know about bacon yet?
Oh, no, I didn't tell her about that. I refer to that sound as you go across there as cooking bacon. If you can make that, as you're cutting it, sound like bacon, that's the ideal speed and pressure.
All right. I cannot wait to install this catbutt glass on the back of our shelf. We're still plugging away on the outdoor work, prepping sites for planting native wildflowers this fall, and continuing some little furniture projects as well, like refinishing these little card catalogs. It's never easy, and every once in a while when something extra frustrating happens, my dad will look at us and ask like, hey, you still glad you did it? Oh yeah. We've only been living here a year, and while most of our energy has been put into surviving and making things feel normal, we have made some time for parties for family and friends to fill out the roof deck, like a surprise party for my mother-in-law's 70th a month ago. And there's a lot left to do, but weirdly, that's part of the magic. After we get the windows fixed, we might start building out the guest quarters in the basement for friends and family and future boomerang children, or who knows, maybe even ourselves someday. But mostly it's just plugging along, trying to fill this space with character, color,
listening to the folks who know more than us, and trying to be respectful stewards of this little school in the cornfields. Hopefully, all the work we're doing will keep this building standing for another 100 years. As always, thank you so much for watching. See you next time.